Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and we have another special guest. An expert on authentic leadership, Kimberly Davis shares her inspirational message of personal power, responsibility, and impact with organizations across the country and teaches leadership programs worldwide. Most notably, her program, OnStage Leadership. For over 20 years, she has helped transform thousands of emerging leaders into strategic difference makers who drive results while leveraging their true selves. Kimberly is a TEDx speaker, and her book, Brave Leadership, Unleash Your Most Confident, Authentic, and Powerful Self to Get the Results You Need, is the 2019 winner of the Benjamin Franklin Silver Award for Business and Career, an Amazon bestseller, and was named as the #1 book to read in Inc. magazine's The 12 Most Impactful Books to Read in 2018. Welcome to the show, Kimberly.
Kristen, I'm so excited to be here. And when you said
I
20 years, I was like, oh gosh. I like you're dating me.
I mean, of course you started work. You were very ambitious,
Yeah,
15
yeah.
year old.
I
So
was
like
only, 5 when
we're
I
just
started.
getting it out there. I am so excited for this conversation. And for anyone who doesn't know, I'm located in Toronto. Kimberly is currently located in San Diego. And Kimberly is one of my favorite people. And whenever I see Kimberly, I always say how much I wish we lived next door to each other because we'd be going for walks every day because we
Every
have
day.
the best
Every
soul
day.
filling
No, I'm not sure we would either be more productive because we live next to each other
conversation.
or a lot less productive because we could hang out together all the time.
I mean, I feel like we would be inspiring each other and just creating
Absolutely.
even more awesomeness. But it's okay because we get to have conversations like this. And I know there'll be other opportunities where we'll be brought together. But I'm super excited for this conversation.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm always happy to
So,
see you, Kristen.
and it's so interesting too, because Kimberly was one of my first guests when I first started the podcast in 2019. That's when we had our conversation. I
I
remember.
I didn't realize I was one of
Yes,
your first.
it
Oh, I feel very
was.
privileged.
Yes. And the timing is so apropos because you're going to be re-releasing and adding some new things to Brave Leadership.
Yeah.
So, let's start there. And well, actually, before we talk more about the book and Brave Leadership and, the whole concept, I want first people to get an opportunity to get to know a little bit more about you and your story,
Yeah.
and like really got you into this work that you're so passionately doing in the world.
Oh, Kristen, my career has been anything but a straight line. I don't do straight lines. I actually started out, I did theater for like 15, 20 years. And then had a bunch of survival jobs and ended up after a very circuitous route doing training and development. And so was a hired gun for a big company that did engagement and leadership work. And I'm out, and this is back like in 2007, 2008. So I was out in the field doing a big engagement program for one of the largest pharma groups in the country and actually in the world. And the director of learning was in my session. And I think I must have talked about my colorful theater days at the time or something. And he went off, and this was when it was you could first go off and Google someone, right? There, like this very cutting edge. And he found an old coaching website of mine, and he found old bios of mine, and he read about my background and history, and he really liked my work in the classroom. And so he came in and he said, I've always wanted to develop a leadership program based on theater tools. And I said, well, I've been noodling something over for years, but haven't had an excuse to develop it. And so I got permission from the company I was working with at the time to work directly with the client because, they didn't want to be associated with this strange theater leadership thing. And I developed a full day experiential program. And before we rolled it out for their high potential leaders, we did an open enrollment session in Dallas, Texas. And it went incredibly well. And so I started doing open enrollment sessions of OnStage Leadership. And then we rolled it out for the pharma group, and it was incredibly successful. And that was 2008. And here I am, many years later, doing the same work, but it keeps getting deeper and richer. And I'm learning more because I learn so much, as I know you do from my own participants, that I feel like I've grown tremendously over the years as well. So it's been the work of my life. I love what I do. And then I started working with about 2009. Someone from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, from the Cox School of Business came to OnStage Leadership, and they're like, "This is great. We would love something like this. Can you do something like this, but make it more academic?" I'm like,
Uh,
"Yeah." So, we added PowerPoint,
yeah.
and I shifted the conversation so that none of you wouldn't know it has uses any theater tools in that use case. But really, the theater tools that I use aren't you they're not about it's not about acting, it's not about pretend, it's not about performance in that way. It really gets down to what is the craft of acting is all about the search for truth.
Yeah.
And how does an actor bring truth to the stage so people they believe in that person, and they leap to their feet in applause because their performance is so powerful. And what gives that actor that sense of truth is really understanding what drives that character from the core space and focusing all of their attention on taking action to achieve what drives them. So it's essentially purpose work, Kristen.
Yes.
So I've spent my life helping, leaders understand what drives you at the core and what actions can you take to have the impact that you want to have on a situation by situation basis. And yes, it originated in the theater, but it's so much bigger than that conversation.
I love that analogy and how you make that connection because I can relate as constantly from the EQ piece talking about
Yeah.
connecting with head and heart. Like you can't just show me
Yes,
data. You need to be able to really bring yourself to it and be able to
very much
create the
so.
feelings and the emotions where people connect with what you're saying, which ultimately is because they're showing up more authentically and connecting to their purpose.
Yes,
So I
yeah.
love
And
that.
and, and really the work is putting empathy into action. So our work overlaps so much,
Yes.
Christian. That's what's
Yes.
one of the things that's so exciting about talking to you is because I'm talking to my partner in crime.
Right, right. And what it looks like to live and breathe it. And I was smiling as you were also talking about how we get to learn so much from the leaders and humans that we're with every day. It's
Right.
something that I never take for granted. Like what a privilege it is because every
Yes,
single time that person shows up and shares stories and allows themselves to be part of your journey, I always feel like it's I'm evolving and learning and growing with
absolutely.
them. I'm like, how amazing is it we get
I
to do
know.
work that creates transformation for the participants, but then through that also transformation for
Exactly.
ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you get to watch that transformation become a ripple across the whole classroom. And I feel like, yes, I'm the conduit for some of this, but it really is what people are learning from the other people in the room that are courageous enough to show up fully. And that's, I think, what's true for all of us in life. When the people around us, when we surround ourselves, like I surround myself with you, with people who are willing to courageously show up fully in life, we all benefit from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's such a beautiful place to start because some people they did not get the honor. I will share in the show notes our conversation that we originally had, which I believe would have been in 2020. But talk a little bit more about when you say brave leadership, what does that mean to be
Yeah,
really?
so the reason I landed on brave leadership. So when I was doing this work, people kept saying, "Wow, this is really unusual. I've never seen anything quite like this." And you have to remember the timing in this, Kristen, because if you go back to 2008, it's before Brene Brown's talking about vulnerability, it's before Dan Pink's Drive, it's before Simon Sinek. So people looked at me like I had three horns on my head. And there wasn't a lot at the time that I could point to and say, yeah, you need to read this person's work and you need to read this person's work. And as it evolved, of course, I learned from them as well, which made my work even richer and really exciting to learn from them. But what I noticed is people are saying, you need to write this down. Nobody is gonna nobody's gonna know what onstage leadership means, right? They're gonna be like, what's that? And just to kind of catch you up, when I talk about onstage leadership, the reason I named my business originally Onstage Leadership was not because of the theater piece. It was because as a leader, you were always on stage, and the people around you were always paying attention. And so, do they choose you? Do they want to follow you, not have to follow you as a leader based on how you show up in space with them? So that's where the onstage came from. But what I realized over the years, when I thought, well, I'm going to be writing about this, nobody's going to know what that means unless I give it an awful lot of context. And when I started connecting the dots around what is what is it that people have in common that are willing to be their true selves powerfully, consistently, responsibly hold their own feet to the fire and take ownership of that and course correct when they're not being their best selves, which, welcome to being human. That happens to all of us all the time, right?
Yeah.
What is that commonality that everyone shares? And what I really landed on is their bravery. It takes an awful lot of courage to be your true self powerfully and hold yourself accountable to yourself and to the impact that you want to have. And so that's where brave leadership really originated.
I love that. I actually just coincidentally shared a quote this morning that I was talking about when you're really tapping into courage and bravery. There can be this misconception that you're fearless when you're doing that. Like,
Yeah.
no, it's feeling all the feels and yet
Yeah.
still
And
taking
showing up
action through.
anyway, right?
Right. Still
Showing up
doing it.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And I
realizing
think
like,
one of the
yeah.
things that I've been really privileged to do, because what we had in the theaters, we did have some really good tools to help us navigate those very human feelings, like where you want to hide and play smaller, or you want to prove yourself, or, all of these different things that we do when we're in the spotlight. The great thing is that the theater had tools to do this, right? So it has allowed me to demystify well, how do I do it even when I'm feeling like I'm gonna die or vomit or like run away?
Yeah.
How do I be brave in the high stakes of my life? And that's where I get to play a little bit of a different game.
Exactly, because I think and that's why I love that you're speaking to that, and I do as well, that it's not that there aren't sensations, you're still noticing the sensations and
Yes.
supporting yourself through that. So what are some of the tools that you talk about when it comes to these moments where you're being brave and showing up authentically
Yeah.
when the sensations and all of the
Well,
not
so
only
the
that?
sensations that we're talking about become red flags for action. So you feel the fluttering in your stomach, you feel the tension, you feel all the feelings you feel, right? And they become a red flag for action. But to do what? Right? That's the big question because there's a lot of talk about, yeah, you got to be brave, you got to do it in the face of feeling fear, but that's an easy thing to say. It's a really hard thing to do. So what do I do? And one of
Mhm.
the most powerful tools that we had in the theater world is called the super objective. And that's if it's a when a character can name, this is what I stand for, this is my driving need, and you can be very clear about this is the impact I want to have, then it becomes a signal for action. Okay, this is the impact you want to have. What action can you take? Well, the problem is, Kristen, is most of us are like, I need to be brave, but we're not clear on what action can I take to have the impact I want to have. We just want to survive the day, right? And that general desire to survive doesn't allow us to circumvent your amygdala because your amygdala is like, this is really scary stuff. You're at risk. You might fail. They might make fun of you. You might say something stupid. All this different stuff. So it's going to send the cortisol through your body and make you feel all the feels, right? Well, how do you overcome that? Well, what the super objective does is it harnesses your focus of attention. So
Mhm.
if instead of focusing on, I've got to do this anyway, and you feel all the feels, and oh no, what do I do about this? And you can't not focus on these body sensations because they're giving you every message to cut and run, right? It allows you to say, okay, wait a second, what's the impact I'm here to have? And focus your attention off of yourself
Yeah.
It's because it's the focus of your attention on yourself that gives you all the body sensations.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to me? I'm in danger. I might look stupid. You're focusing on yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you can focus your attention off of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
now your amygdala doesn't pick up that you've got anything to be worried about and you're allowed to show up powerfully. Okay. So the super objective allows you to circumvent your amygdala, harness your attention to focus on a very specific action because it's that generalized action that doesn't get you out of the hot seat, right? But a very specific action in time. So what's the impact I want to have on you right now? And what's the impact I want to have on you that is who is listening to us right now? What's the impact I want to have? If I can focus my attention and take action on that very specific action, it
Mm-hmm.
harnesses my attention and I don't feel nervous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that because it starts to create your focus on how can I be of service? How can I be of value? How can I
Right.
be here? It's reminding me of back in the day, even when I started my business over 8 years ago. I remember some people were really struggling with that because they were like, I don't want to put myself out there. And then I
Yeah.
said, well, what do you mean? Like it's a disservice. Like this is not about me. I'm putting myself
Yeah.
out there because I have people to serve. And if I don't put myself out there, there are
Right.
people who could be missing out on the ways that I could be helping them. So I
Yes.
have to get out of my own way. But I like what you're saying there because I think because your mind is also, it's a coping strategy. It's trying to
That's
keep you
right.
safe. So it's like, thank you, mind. We
Yeah.
just want to let the mind know, like, we are safe
It's
and we're
all
going to
good.
just go here,
And
right? We're going to go over here. We're going to move the
right.
direction and the focus over here. And guess what? That's what it's all about, anyways. Like we are here to connect with the humans and be able to make that impact. So it's
Exactly.
so effective.
Exactly. And what it does, though, having your own super objective, because I think a lot of times when we use language, I want to bring value, right? Well, what does that mean? How do
Right.
you specifically bring value in a way that's unique to Kristen?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's where we miss the boat because it's like, oh, I need to bring, how do you tap into your strengths and your values so
Mm-hmm.
you harness that attention so
Mm-hmm.
the impact that you want to make is unique to you. And that's what's powerful about the super objective because my super objective is different than your super objective. I
Yeah.
suspect, for the two of us, there's probably some overlap because we're an awful lot alike, but if you know what your specific super objective is, it allows you to take consistent, constructive action that's in alignment with your values and your strengths to have the
Mm-hmm.
impact you want to have, which is
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And using your natural gifts and talents, which of course is going to energize you.
App is going to enter. So that will allow you to feel engaged, right? It will allow you to be and bring the best of who you are to the
Mm-hmm.
situation because you're going to feel more alive. You're going to feel more energized, but you're also going to do the things that come naturally to you.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing about the super objective that's so exciting, right? If you're focused on having an impact, it forces you to pay attention to, am I having the impact I
Right.
want to have? Yes or no?
Right. Yeah.
Why? What
Yeah.
action can I take to have the impact? So it forces me to care. What is it you need from me, Kristen,
Mm-hmm.
for me to have the impact that I want to have?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it's one thing to say, yes, this is the impact I want to have. But if
Yeah.
I don't have it, that's on you. Oh, I just couldn't do
Right.
it with her. She just didn't,
Right.
she's one of those people, just didn't work out.
Right.
No, 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 no. If it's my super objective, the responsibility is on me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not having the impact I want to have, it's on me to course correct. But if you can't name it, you can't do anything about it, right? If you don't know what the impact you want to have is, you're not going to catch when you're not having it.
Well, and I love that because then it creates more intentionality, and then you can realize, okay, I'm not, maybe I can be showing up with more curiosity to ask more questions to see am I not having that impact? Maybe that person's not feeling understood or validated or not feeling like you understand their experience. And so that's why they're not feeling connected to what you're saying.
Exactly. I think we need just to take this show on the road because, like, yes, yes, yes,
Yes,
yes, yes,
yes,
yes,
yes.
exactly,
That's where it
exactly.
starts to really, really shift. So I'm curious as we're talking about this, conceptually, like putting it into action. So I'm thinking, okay, so we've got someone, who maybe isn't having but they don't know that they're not having the impact. So I guess I would say, how did that they start to measure whether they're
Yeah,
having the impact that they are intending to have in order to be
yeah,
able to course correct? What are your suggestions there? So there's a leader listening right now, and they're
yeah,
realizing
yeah,
whatever it may be, maybe they're trying to, there's a new strategic directive, or
yeah,
maybe that, there's something, some sort of change, something that they're trying to help
yeah.
people get on board.
Yeah.
And
So
notice,
there's a couple of things to think about. First of all, super
yeah.
objectives different than goals, right? You can map your super objective to goals, and your super objective is not the same as your job responsibilities. So they're different things, right? So you can map your super objective to your goals and to your job responsibilities, but they are not one and the same, right? And so for example, my super objective is to connect people to the best of who they are. That's my super objective. Now, I have a lot of business goals that are designed for me to achieve my super objective, right?
Mm,
And then every situation I face is an opportunity to achieve my super objective as well. But it's on me to be paying attention to, am I having the impact, yes or no? Always paying attention to yes or no, yes or no.
yeah,
The whether or not you're achieving your goals, if they're mapped to your super objective, is a great way to measure whether or not you're achieving your super objective, right? But
makes
if you've got goals and they're not mapped to your super objective, your
mm,
goals are not going to be a good measurement of that.
mhm,
But I tell you what, when I map my goals to my super objective, I knock my goals out of
mhm,
the park.
mhm, in such
What
alignment.
I think is it becomes the how you achieve your goals. So it puts those goals on steroids. So
Yeah.
it's not because when you think about goal achieving, Kristen, there are a lot of deconstructive
Mm,
things that we can do to achieve our goals,
mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm,
We can sacrifice our values to achieve our goals.
mhm,
We also do a lot of things to get from point A to point B really fast
mhm,
that may not be in alignment with our super objective. So when you can map your super objective to your goals, what you'll find is your goals, you're going to hit your goals, but you're going to knock them out of the park even more so than you would otherwise, and stay in alignment with who you truly are and be able to, people experience you as authentic, right? Because you are who you say you are. Not,
exactly.
this is my goal. I believe in just to pull something out of thin air. I believe in, so my super objective is I want to cultivate trust. I want to cultivate trust, right? And that's all great and good until people aren't hitting their numbers. And now all of a sudden, heads are going to roll,
Right,
right?
right.
So how well did you cultivate trust there? Not so well. But if you truly focus on cultivating trust in order to hit those numbers,
Mhm,
you the trust will get you more than the
exactly.
numbers you ever set for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think what's really important is the alignment piece that you're saying there. And then also, let's remember the other piece is that then you feel fulfilled because
Yes,
you're
yes,
achieving something that's
yes.
truly aligned with what really matters. Because I talk a lot about this when it comes to success. If you see a video, I'm doing air quotes with the success
Yeah,
because there's like this belief that this is the definition of success. But
right.
there isn't one universal definition of success. Speaking to what you're just saying there in terms of
Yeah,
that purpose and
yeah.
impact, each person identifying what that is so that they are taking steps that are in alignment with what truly matters to them, then you feel like, oh, wow, like you're saying with the energizing piece, because they're taking actions around what actually truly matters to them.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, how many people have you seen who have knocked their goals out of the park, but they
Right.
feel empty and sad and lonely, and they're lonely for a reason because they've left everybody behind, and they don't their relationships are crumbling around their feet. It's so this is a way to achieve your goals in a way that allows you to feel that sense of meaning and purpose in your life and to enrich your relationships
Mm-hmm.
while you're hitting your goals. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not one or the other, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So tell me more around what was the impetus for you to do the re-release, which I believe at this
Yeah,
point is coming out, so everyone can get excited in
I
June.
know, I'm so
There will be
excited.
a re-release of Brave Leadership. But what was the impetus for you to want to re-release it?
So there were two things that were really important to me with the re-release. In the first edition, I brought some examples into the book of very purpose-driven uh, organizations that had a very purpose-driven leader at the helm. Um, COVID and other things that have happened um, uh, have have caused those purpose-driven leaders to either step away from the helm or to make choices that weren't in alignment with who they were as a leader. And their organizations have suffered because of it, right? So I needed some new examples that were more relevant post-COVID
Yeah.
because when a leader stops being in alignment with their purpose, they suffer and their organization suffers. So, and those are case studies for
Yeah.
certain, but I would rather bring really relevant
Right.
relevant
Yeah.
examples in the literature because the conversation is so relevant. The tools are so relevant and so needed today. But I didn't want anyone to dismiss the conversation because they went, oh, well, that company, not so much anymore.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yes.
So that was one big reason.
Yeah.
The other reason is because technology has caught up. And what's
Mhm.
so exciting, Kristen, is for over 20 years, I've had this dream of being able to create a super objective tool that could democratize the conversation. So everyone could know their super objective because I've seen the difference this work can make. And I don't want to be the gatekeeper for it. I want everyone to be able to have the super objective in the same way that everyone knows their strengths, knows their disc profile, and yada yada yada. So the book is going to include a free tool to allow people to identify their super objective online,
Right.
and that's pretty game
Pretty
changing.
exciting.
That's pretty
Yes.
game changing. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So exciting. And we'll definitely have show notes for when that book gets released in June. So when you start to think about this work and brave leadership and helping people to really connect to the impact they want to make, tell me what that looks like in organizations. So you talked about even some of the organizations that might have been doing this more effectively in the past
yeah,
and they've shifted out of it.
yeah,
When you start to think with organizations that are doing it really well now, and
yeah,
where do you think they might be falling short? So maybe we'll look at it from both perspectives. So if you think about what's going on right now in the year
yeah,
2025,
yeah,
where do you
yeah,
see organizations falling short? And what do you want to see more of? So what conversely,
yeah,
like where do you think the possibilities and the potential are for them to be able
yeah.
to really improve?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so there's a number of places we could go with this conversation. One, I think the person at the helm, it's really critical that they're clear on their purpose and beyond shareholder value. And I know a CEO's mandate is shareholder value. I get that, that's their legal responsibility. But if that's all they care about, they will not be able to bring an organization together towards a purpose that's going to create a greater purpose in the world. It's not going to, and they will also fall short on their numbers. And I think that's what we're seeing by all of the data and the research out there. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is so interesting because sometimes I'll go in and I'll work with a team and their leader will not quite understand the point of the exercise. And they'll think that they can use, no, we want our the super objective. I need to control their super objective. I want to tell them what their super objective should be. And I want to hold them accountable. Are you achieving your super objective or not? And that is not
Yeah,
what this is about.
yeah,
So a super objective is very much a personal individual exercise. For it to be successful within an organization, what's really important is for us to individually understand, okay, so there's what drives me as a person, but I'm working at this organization, right? So why do I personally care about what this organization's up to? what's the whether it's the vision, mission, values, what does this organization stand for? Now, the problem is a lot of organizations, they have their vision, mission, values, or credo, or whatever that is, and they're just very nice words on a poster
Yeah.
in a hallway or in a
Mm-hmm.
training room, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're not showing up in the organization. So it's critical for every single person to say, why do I care about what we're up to as an organization? And whether or not that was clarified for you and is showing up consistently within your organization or not, you personally have to understand, why do you care? Because if you don't understand why you care, you will not be able to really rally your ability to care and make a positive impact. So that's a really, really critical piece.
Yeah.
Ideally, in
Mm-hmm.
the perfect world, we
Mm-hmm.
can map that. So this is, our organization stands for this. We've got a leader at the helm who's very clear on what he or she cares about and the impact that they want to have, right? Beyond shareholder value, beyond the paycheck, beyond shareholder value, right? So ideally, you've got a leader at the helm that does that. You've got an organization that's got very clear vision, mission, values, and they're working in alignment with that. I know some of this is fantasy, but yes, they're working in alignment with that. And then on the individual level, you have the individuals saying, why do I care about this?
Yes.
What's the impact I want to have on an
Mm-hmm.
organization that's purpose is this,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I can go into my teams and I can focus on, this is the impact I want to have with my team. This is the impact I want to have with my colleagues. This is the impact I want to have with our clients or with the community or whatever I personally care about. And to know very clearly that some people, they want to have an impact on a team, like they have a team orientation. That's what they care about most. And they focus on having the impact on the team. And the byproduct of that is that the organization benefits. The byproduct of that is the individual's benefit, right? But their orientation is team orientation. There are some people who, want to make a difference one person at a time, and for me, that's the way I do it. So I'm a one belly button at a time person. I want to make a difference to you, and 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 to you. I'm going to connect you to the best of who you are, and if I do that, the
Mm-hmm.
ripple effect is you've got a stronger team, you've got a stronger organization, you've got happier clients. But that's the ripple effect, is the byproduct. And I think it's the recognition. Why am I losing this
Recognition.
word? Recognition. Recognition. I've lost the word. The recognition that now I've lost that. It's the recognition that how we get there is going to be different for every single one of us,
Yes.
but it's on me to have the impact that I want to have,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I think that's so important because it's never about a one size fits all. I think this is what's always
Right,
important to uniquely
right.
be able to go on your journey, do more of that inner work. And that's making me think of, and I love what you said around the CEO at the top. Like part of the catalyst for starting this podcast is speaking to CEOs, HR
Yeah,
executive, and
yeah,
people leaders from all of
yeah.
those different angles because I
Yes,
want CEOs to hear. I want HR to be part of that, of course. And then each
exactly,
individual, those leaders all get to
exactly.
be. But I'm curious as we're talking about this too, and when you think about getting together with the leaders, so 100%, yes, CEOs who are listening,
Yeah,
please, please, like ask yourself these questions because it's not like you get to this place as a CEO and then it's like we're not focusing on this anymore. It's actually hypercritical because you're modeling and
absolutely.
it's trickling
Yeah,
down.
absolutely.
But I'm also curious when you think about when you're doing this training and you have everybody in the room and you're helping them on this journey, what do you notice? Because I'm sure with having a lot of these, I think you're working with emerging leaders or
Yeah.
middle leaders. What are some of the common themes that you see that you're?
Well, and that's actually, I won't say that's new. My business was started with emerging leaders, but I've worked all the way up to the C-suite, but that is the sweet spot, really. And for me personally, it's because I believe the emerging leaders are our future. And if we want to see more purposeful leadership, we've got to start with the emerging leaders because that's, it's the world has changed so much that the leaders that are currently in the C-suite, it's not that they're bad leaders, it's that they learned to lead in a very different era.
Yes.
It was much more transactional, much more command control, much more authoritarian, a very different world.
Yeah.
And in our organizations, those leadership behaviors can't get the same results. So in really focusing on emerging leaders, it's helping them recognize um, the difference that they can make, not just where they are in the moment, but the byproduct of what the future will hold. Um, uh, but So one of the challenges that emerging leaders particularly face is that they are at the precipice of a new era, and they're having to lead in a world that both up and down the ladder are very different. They have different set of needs,
Mhm.
and not making either set of needs wrong.
Yes.
And that's hard to do,
Yes.
right? Because
Mm.
you may be getting feedback from your boss that you need to not develop personal relationships. You need to don't you won't be able to do the hard stuff if you.
Right.
But we know from research that actually the relationships are critical to be able to get people today in the workforce to perform exponentially more than they've ever been asked before, right? And so it's not saying, oh, leader, you're wrong and bad. It's saying, okay, what is my leader telling me through their lens? What is it what are they really trying to get at? What they don't the how is not as important is they're looking for a result, right? They're looking for an outcome. So
Mhm.
your how you get there may be very, very different, but they're having to be translators. They're having to be able to say, okay, here's the feedback I'm getting. What are they really after with this feedback? And how do I put that through my own personal sieve and what I know to be true and get the outcomes they're looking for, but maybe take a different route to do it?
Yes. Yes. Which to me also points to, as you were talking through, because I talk sometimes about managing up and managing down and
Yeah.
managing across. And because again, you're working with a whole bunch of different humans,
Right.
different
Right.
operating systems, different ways of seeing the world, different lived experiences, all the things. But what I've seen universally is if you can tap into empathy, as we talked about, if you can tap
Yeah.
into curiosity and
Yeah.
help and try to understand their perspective, so often it's just if, again, both sides feel understood and heard and
Exactly.
validated, it's amazing
Exactly.
what can happen because ultimately we are all wired and want to have human connection. Like we all want to connect
Right.
human to human,
Right.
which I actually find is universal because even as I'm
Yep.
helping some of those executives that, of course, like where their role models in the past, even though
Yep.
with that though, I can talk to like some leaders who, later on in life, maybe in their 60s and 70s, and they sometimes when I ask them about who their inspiring leaders, back in the day, they always still describe those kind of leaders, which were the ones
Right.
not
Right.
command and
Yep.
control, emotionally
Yep.
intelligent. We didn't necessarily
Yep.
have the word emotionally intelligent, which makes sense because they felt connected and felt like they mattered,
Right.
all of the things.
Right. They
But
didn't have the language for it at the time.
right, they didn't
Right.
have the language. So I think part of it is also a permission slip that I
Very
get to
much
say to
so.
them, guess what? Vulnerability isn't a weakness. Vulnerability actually
Right.
creates more connection. You showing up
Right.
in these ways
Yeah.
you were saying earlier actually invites in you being authentic and sharing this moment or sharing this story is going to create major connection because you're valuable like everybody else just because you're the CEO there. And they're
Right.
going to actually respect and connect to you on a deeper level because they feel your humanness.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also that's true why so many senior leaders are lonely in their roles. There is truth that there's loneliness. It's lonely at the top, but I think it's also because they isolate their humanity from the humanity of everyone else. And I think if we could all realize that we're in this soup together, like it or not, we're in this
Yeah,
soup together,
yeah,
that it changes the nature of the beast, right? I
exactly.
think one of the things I really like about the idea of the super objective in this work is that it allows you to put yourself in the driver's seat of your own life.
Hmm.
So if you're focused on having this impact, right, and you're not having the impact, you look at that simply as an obstacle, right? And what action can you take to have the impact you want to have in the face of this obstacle? Because presence doesn't happen in the absence of obstacles.
Hmm.
Presence happens because we are so focused on, having the impact we want to have in the face of the obstacle. People are like, oh my gosh, you're the real deal, right? Um, looking at what's the impact you want to have both up and down the ladder in the face of the obstacles, and that is what's going to go, well, I really need to get very curious, right? I really need to understand what's going on with this person emotionally, and the biggest obstacle to that
Hmm.
is judgment. So
Hmm.
anytime we feel
Hmm.
ourselves, and you're going to judge because you're human, and that's what we do as humans. But anytime you feel a sense of judgment coming in, or you decide about a person, go, wait a second, let me just get really curious. Let me just check that out. Because there's almost always something that's underneath it. Even the biggest jerks on the planet, usually it's because they're trying to prove themselves, or they're
Yeah,
insecure, or both, or
exactly.
so getting that doesn't justify the behavior by any stretch of the imagination, but
Mhm.
it does help you understand, so then you can approach it in a different way. And
Exactly.
that's where your power lies.
Exactly. Exactly. I so beautifully said. And I think a great place to be able to end, because I think we could just talk for hours. And I want everyone to also check out the book when it's released, and because it's such great stuff. Um, I always like to give my guests an opportunity to leave a final thought. So, what's most front and center for you if you were going to leave the audience with a final thoughts?
So my dream
Yes.
is to democratize brave, to democratize the super objective. Um, and I want you to imagine what this world would look like if every person was clear about the impact that they want to have and took responsibility for having that impact, and how
Mhm.
different things would be in our workplaces, in our families, and in our communities. Um, so, think about what's the impact you want to have, and work on that, because that will be the key to brave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And right now we need
Absolutely.
brave.
Yes, we do more than
Yeah.
ever, actually. Where can people learn more about you and your work, Kimberly?
I think LinkedIn is probably the best place to go, because I'm all over LinkedIn. And my website is brave-leadership.com, but LinkedIn is probably where you'll find
Yes.
find the most of me.
Yes. And we'll include all of that in the show notes. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here today.
I feel so spoiled to get to spend time with you, Kristen. I really do.
The feeling is mutual. I feel exactly the same. Thank you so much for being here today. And just want to let everybody else know, if you enjoyed this episode, please share with others. Thanks so much for your reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And if you would like to develop more confident and emotionally intelligent leaders in your organization, let's connect. I can share more about my one-on-one coaching, transformational keynotes, and ongoing leadership training. Wherever you are listening in the world, we're saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, sending tons of love. Bye bye.